Hi, this is Martin from Imagineer Systems. Today we're going to be looking at how to create this titles effect using Mocha to track the large sweeping camera pan. So here we are in Mocha with a great piece of iceberg footage supplied to us by Gentoo Multimedia via artbeats.com. We're going to track this plane of water to get the overall camera pan that's occurring here, and then apply that tracking data back in After Effects for our titles. The first thing you want to do when tracking any piece of footage is to scrub through the timeline and just locate the best areas to track. In this particular instance, we can see that we've got a fair amount of detail up here, plus some spotty pieces of detail that are nice and high contrast compared to the underlying background. If we scrub backwards through the timeline, we lose some of the detail that's been over here, and we reveal some more detail over here. So in this instance, I'm going to start my search area around this part of the footage, and then track backwards to try and take in the rest of the detail as it comes around. So, starting at the end of the footage, we're just going to come up to our X-Spline tool up here, and draw a fairly large shape. So I'm going to start all the way up here and draw around the outside of the iceberg here, taking in all of this area. I'm going to hold down the Z key to zoom out slightly, and just right click to close off the shape. I'm going to extend it beyond the boundaries of the footage just to take in anything that may pop up when the footage rotates around. Because we are rotating specifically around, I'm going to turn on perspective, and I'm also going to turn up the minimum percentages of pixels used just to try and grab as much detail as possible. So let's set this to maybe 90. Everything else can stay the same. Before I begin though, I'm also going to turn on my surface. Now the surface is the actual object inside the layer that the tracking data will be applied to, and we can manipulate this surface in any way we want, and it will still remain relative to the tracking data. So in this instance, I'm going to set it up so I can see how the surface is rotating as we track. So I'm just going to set up a simple perspective plane in the scene, just about there. To make this track even easier to follow, I'm also going to turn on the grid. This means we can actually set up our plane a little easier and then follow the path of the perspective track as it occurs. I'm going to also come up to my viewer preferences in the top corner here and set this up to be about 30 in X and 30 in Y. We can then also readjust our surface with the grid to make it fit that plane a little bit better. And that will probably do. We can now start our track. I'm just going to pan up a little bit here with the X tool and Z again to zoom in. And then we just come down to our track button here, making sure our timeline's at the end, and just start tracking backwards. You'll see the grid will follow around as the track moves, as well as the spline and our surface. We can turn off these at any time we want to, just to be able to see what's going on better. I've just paused in the middle of the track here to quickly show you that we have some more detail here. I'll turn off the grid. So here's the amount of track that's been done so far. And you can suddenly see that we've got more information that is coming into the shot. At any point when we're tracking in Mocha, we can actually take our layer that we've been tracking with and expand it out further. to take in all of this new information. We can even add points to our layer if we need to, just to avoid the certain things that we don't want in the shot, such as this bit that's jutting out here, which may ruin the track rather than help it. Once we've done this, we can continue tracking. The search area will then take in all the new information. So here we have the final track. You can see the grid is locking on quite well to the icy water, and so we can now take this tracking information and bring it across to After Effects. Before we export to After Effects, there's a couple of things we want to do to our surface to make it more usable. I'm first going to rename the layer something more interesting, like Track. And then I'm going to go to the end of my footage, where we first started the track, and use the Align Surface button under the Layer panel. I'll turn off my grid. What this has done is made the surface the same size and dimensions as the footage we've tracked, and made the tracking information relative to that point. So if I drag my track back now, you'll see that the surface is projecting from that aligned point and translating through the rest of the track. This is very important when we come into After Effects because we want to be able to apply this tracked data to a piece of pre-comped footage. To show you how this works, I'm now going to export the track. I'll come down to my Export Tracking Data button, and under our Export Tracking Data dialog here, we've got many options to export to multiple different applications. And in this instance, we're just going to use After Effects Corner Pin with support for motion blur. We then just click Copy to Clipboard. Over in After Effects, I've already got my ArtBeats footage set up inside the comp. And the first thing I'm going to do is create the text that we want to use for the shot. So I'm going to click on my text button and click inside. And let's give it a generic title. Let's call it Under the Ice. Nice and big. And then the first thing I'm going to do with this piece of text is I'm going to pre-comp it so that it fits the full frame. So we do Command-Shift-C, and we move all of the attributes into the composition. Let's just call it Under the Ice Comp. Okay. I'm then going to, at the end of my footage, convert it to 3D and then rotate this comped layer into place. So I'm just going to press R, and using my X rotation, I'm going to find about the right spot that we want it to be. So about there. We can use the Z tool to bring it down. And I'm also going to use my scale tool just to scale it down a little bit. And rotate. So about there. Once we have this in place, I'm then going to pre-comp the layer again, so that the footage for the text is set to, again, the full size of the comp. So we just pre-comp, again move all attributes into the new composition, and under this I'm going to call it Under the Ice 3D. And then click OK. Now that we have this in position, we can paste our tracking data. We need to make sure, though, that we move our timeline to the very beginning. Otherwise, our keys will be pasted at the end of the timeline. So let's just press Command V to paste. And you can immediately see the corner pin has altered the text to start where it needs to be at frame 0. If I scrub forwards, you'll see it drags through in the correct perspective. Then all we need to do is add some simple effects. So for the text layer, I'm going to just press F4 to bring up my modes. I'm going to choose soft light, just to set it under the water here. We could also use overlay, but it adds a little bit more reflection on top, so it sort of makes the titles look like they're sitting on top of the water rather than under it. So in this instance we'll keep it at soft. I'm then going to come up to Effect, Distort, Displacement Map, and under our displacement map settings I'm going to set my displacement map to be the footage. I'm also going to change the displacement for the horizontal to luminance, and again the same for vertical. We can probably leave it at about 5. Now when I scrub through, you'll see there's some very subtle distortion happening to the text layer. So here's the final result. We've got a nice subtle distortion going on and a beautifully locked off piece of text using pre-comped layers and the tracking data from Mocha. Thanks again to Gentoo Multimedia Limited for their brilliant footage via artbeats.com. This has been Martin Brennand for Imagineer Systems. To learn more about what is possible with Imagineer's range of planar tracking products, check out our tutorials at this address, or go straight to imagineersystems.com and click on Tutorials.